Hey, what is going on, guys? XpertFusion here, and welcome to the Walking Dead Telltale TV adaptation series. This is Season 3, Episode 7, which is titled For Us. So, of course, this episode is going to continue after last episode, but it's really going to tell the story of characters that we didn't even see last episode, actually, characters that we saw in Episode 5. This includes Carver, who obviously kidnapped Rebeeca, as well as Luke, Jane, Blake, and all those characters over at the killer's base. So we're going to see that. We're going to also see some other stuff. So let's get into it. The episode begins with Carver continuing driving Rebeeca away in the van as he aims a gun at her. She is tied up around the back of the seat, so she's obviously not able to really do anything. Rebeeca asks what he's going to do with her, and Carver doesn't answer for a few seconds until he decides to say that he just wants to be with his baby. Rebeeca says she's going to escape. She knows he won't kill her, so it won't be that easy. It won't be that hard for her to escape, really. It'll be hard for him to actually do anything if he's not going to kill her, you know what I mean? And Carver says he isn't going to let that happen in the first place. Back at the killer's base, which let me remind you guys that the killers, they're not actually called that in the show. I didn't want to give them some cliche name like the Saviors or the Vultures or whatever the hell, named groups they have within the show. I'm just referring to them as the killers because that's just easier for me. It's easier for you guys. I don't have to keep referring to them as Calvin's group or something like that. But I don't want this group to have a name. I don't feel like all groups need a name. They don't even have a community name. They're just a group of people trying to save the world. That's what they think, at least. That's in their mind. And they don't give themselves a name. They're just doing what they're doing. And what they're doing involves killing people. So I said, I'll just call them the killers. So, back at the killer's base, Luke stays put within his prison cell, and he looks around at people being dragged across the halls as they scream in horror as they're probably being brought to their death. Jane also is sitting in her cell, looking at a picture of her sister Molly that she had in her pocket this whole entire time. She has a flashback to when she reunited with Molly after Molly escaped from the killer's base, and Jane was, at this Civil War site, but then Jane ended up going on a supply run, and she ended up getting taken by these same people. So basically, they just got flip-flopped on each other. That's pretty much what happened. As Molly was captured, then Molly was captured by Carver after she escaped, but she was with Jane for a little bit in between then, and then Jane got captured by these people a little bit after as well. Blake is also in his cell as well. He's just sitting there looking around. Calvin walks around the training camp talking to his right-hand man, Stu. Stu says that the remaining folks from the attack haven't returned yet. Of course, these people were brutally killed by Kenny. Calvin says he wants a big group sent there now to take out that entire herd, and Stu says there were nearly thousands of the walkers there, but Calvin says they need to clear them, so do it. Luke, Jane, and Blake are brought to the training courtyard with Calvin. Calvin tells them that they all passed the tests. Therefore, they will eventually be accepted as one of them. But he can't let them just roam free until he can trust them, which is nearly impossible of a thing to do. So that's why we put you through immense brainwashing techniques that are done by some of our professionals that'll avoid that from happening. So this includes a lot of torturing and suffering that'll kind of put you through brain work that'll force you into believing what we believe. And Luke's like, that's fucking crazy, but Calvin says, there is just one more thing that you need to do before we get to this stage. And so Calvin brings them into a large indoor factory type place. And about 10 guys are lined up on their knees on the floor with gags around their mouth. The killers stand amongst the whole place holding guns, kind of guarding the place. And Calvin tells them to watch as he pulls out a Desert Eagle and shoots one man in the head. And then he just moves down the line, shooting a bunch of these captives. Now they're screaming and yelling for mercy through their gags, but Calvin just keeps going until he hits the last three, and he leaves the last three there. And he gives the gun to Luke and tells him to shoot one of them. Luke puts the gun to the man's head as he shakes in fear, and Calvin says, if you don't do this, then you will end up just like them. This is your final stage to show that you are one of us, that you will do anything for us. The man is yelling for mercy as he gets the gag off his mouth, and he says, please don't do this. And he's crying and snotting all over the place. But Luke snaps, and he shoots at Calvin, but the gun just clicks. Calvin says only 7 rounds in a deagle. Well, a deagle, Desert Eagle, only 7 rounds in it. So Calvin takes his knife and he stabs it in the throat of the captive. And he says that Luke failed to do what he had to do for the group. Calvin says he's disappointed. Calvin gives Jane a knife and tells her to do it to the next man. And Jane does it. She just stabs the man right in that side of the head. Hard. But it doesn't kill him right away. He's screaming in pain. His blood is pouring out of his mouth. And you could see in his eyes, they're like almost bulging out because of the knife stabbing through it, kind of pushing some of his eyeball out. And Jane is just tearing up and struggling to put him out of his misery as the knife just sticks halfway out of his head. But Jane just takes the knife and pulls it out of his head, which causes blood to gush out, which kills him. And Blake tells Calvin to just kill him now because he's not going to do it. And Jane tells Blake that he's going to kill him anyways, so you might as well do it yourself. Calvin tells Jane to shut up as he looks over to Blake, but Blake gets all worried and he changes his mind rather quickly when he realizes that Jane's right. So he takes a knife and he slits the man's throat as Calvin decides to finish the man off with a stab to the head. Blake is disgusted by what he just did, so he throws up. Jane and Blake are returned to their cells as Calvin drags Luke to his office, and he has Luke tied up as Calvin asks him why he didn't comply. Luke says he wasn't killing an innocent man, and Calvin says, A, he wasn't innocent. He was actually caught raping a woman a few months ago. And Calvin says, B, he was going to die anyways. Calvin says normally when people fail, he either kills them on the spot or brings them to executors to do it for him, but he really did like Luke. Calvin says he wants to give him a second chance, and he knows it must be tough seeing your friends not care about you enough to even consider taking you back after being captured. He's referring to Carver not giving a shit that they have Luke captured. We go see back with Carver now, and Carver is driving still, and he makes it to this big mansion with Rebeeca, and he keeps a gun to Rebecca's head as they walk up to the mansion. Carver uses handcuffs to lock Rebeeca to a pole outside as Carver starts to walk inside to check around. Rebeeca asks, what if a walker comes? And Carver says, then scream. Carver goes through this mansion to see if there's any walkers, but he doesn't find anything. He brings Rebeeca inside and cuffs her to a metal pipe in the living room next to a couch. Rebeeca asks how the hell he plans to do this, how he can just let her sit here and take care of her while she's tied up 24/7. Carver says if that's what it takes to be with this child, then it's worth it. Rebeeca asks why he's so fucked up. What caused this? Rebeeca says she knows he had a wife or something, but what happened? Carver says that none of that mattered. None of that matters anymore. It's not important. He just wants to be with the baby. He knows she doesn't love him, but that doesn't matter. Rebeeca says you could have been with the baby. You could have if you didn't do everything that you did, if you didn't kill her friends or her husband. Rebeeca says, I will escape. I have people back there who need me, like Nick, Sarah, Carlos, obviously not knowing that he's dead, and hopefully Luke is out there somewhere. Carver tells Rebeeca that those people who attacked, they actually had Luke captive, and Carver says he had something going on there, you know? He had a community, he had something, and it all failed just because of one goddamn group. And Rebeeca says, you did the same to many others, right? You destroyed communities and killed families just because they wouldn't follow your orders. During this conversation, Carver's just going around unpacking things in this mansion, and outside we see Roman, who is shown sneaking around the van. He has a knife, no gun, but he is sneaking around. He knows Carver's inside, and he's getting ready to do something. Back at the base, Calvin brings Luke to a large pit outside full of walkers. Calvin says he's going to give him one more chance if he can survive this. Calvin pushes Luke into the pit. There's roughly 25 walkers in it. There's nothing but rocks and some rebar. And basically Luke just grabs a piece of rebar and starts stabbing walkers like crazy. He gets outnumbered, but he uses the rebar as a shield and starts pushing groups of walkers to the floor. He's able to actually train the walkers around in a circle almost. Kind of like from Nazi Zombies. If you guys ever played that, you can train zombies. He's basically training the walkers right now in a circle. He herds them up like a farmer herding sheep. They all follow him around in a circle, and as they are moving, he slowly stabs a few of them in the head, and he just keeps going until they are all dead. Calvin claps from amazement of those abilities that Luke just showed off. Back at the mansion, Carver continues to talk to Rebeeca after he returns from a piss. But Carver is suddenly attacked from behind from Roman. The two get into a massive scuffle throughout the living room. Roman keeps trying to stab Carver as he gets he tries to avoid all the stabs as much as possible. Rebeeca is forced to just stand there and watch, but Carver's holster belt, which has his gun and keys in it, is thrown off during this fight, and it falls near Rebeeca. Obviously, one of those keys unlocks the handcuffs. The keys are in it, of course, so Rebeeca tries to reach for it. Roman says he's going to kill him for what he did to him and what he did to his people. Carver throws Roman into the wall and kicks him while he's down. He goes over to grab his gun from his holster and he sees Rebeeca reaching for it, but Roman gets up and quickly jumps onto Carver just as he grabs his revolver. They go flying out the front porch window and right onto the porch. The gun falls out of his hands and they continue fighting. Carver and Roman both throw some hard punches, and Roman grabs some glass from the floor and slashes Carver's leg. Roman ends up getting on top of Carver. Rebeeca is successfully able to reach the keys as she gets herself freed. She gets up. Carver, though, is able to grab back his revolver after he pushes Roman off of him, and he grabs it, but Roman runs away, and Carver fires at him, but he runs out of ammo after 2 shots, and he misses both the shots. And he starts trying to fill it back up as Roman gets away. Carver goes back inside as he sees that Rebeeca has escaped. He slowly looks around the house holding his gun up. Rebeeca's upstairs, slowly walking around. Carver goes room to room looking for her. Carver yells out that she can't be this stupid. She's going to need someone to deliver that baby. But Rebeeca's able to get outside the second-story window onto this garage-looking thing at the top, and she climbs her way down successfully. And it's really hard, though, because she's pregnant, obviously, so she's struggling to do this, but she does it successfully and quietly enough to the point where she's able to run off and get out of there. And then it turns nighttime, and we get to see the base again. Luke gets put back into his cell. As Jane is being brought from where she was before back to her cell, she's kind of walking down this hallway, and she sees keys in the wall, and the person behind her actually starts getting distracted by talking to some girl that was flirting with him. So she's able to quickly grab the keys off the wall without anyone seeing. So Jane is brought back to her cell, and of course she's untied and put in her cell, left there. She quickly uses the keys that she got to open up her gate, and she goes behind the guard who put it away and snaps his neck from behind. Luke sits in his cell for a bit as he suddenly hears someone fall over like they got knocked out. Jane then approaches Luke's cell and unlocks it. Luke asks her what the fuck she's doing, and Jane says she swiped the keys hanging from a wall just before when she was headed here. She says they just have to get the fuck out of here before anyone else notices, but all the other prisoners in the cells are yelling for Jane and Luke to release them. So Luke says if they release them all, it might cause a rampage, which would actually be good for them. It might give them a better shot of getting out. So Jane starts going down the line, unlocking more and more cells, and one of the cells includes Blake, of course. Jane says she killed the 2 guards on this post, so they should be alright. They get a bunch of prisoners out as they open up the main doors in the cell, which leads off into the courtyard. Luke says they're all going to make a run for the gates, and they don't stop for nothing. But once they open the doors, the alarms quickly go off, and they panic and run. And Luke says we got to stick together, but they just start running in all directions like crazy. And what ends up happening is that people from the roofs, they're holding light machine guns. They don't realize there's going to be this many guards, but there is. And they open fire on these prisoners. And just about all the prisoners that are running away are shot and killed in a gruesome ass way. But Luke, Jane, and Blake are able to hit the deck behind a storage crate. But they see all these people that they just let out dying right in front of them as they attempt to make it to safety. Blake asks what the fuck do they do now? We see Rebeeca at nighttime now continuing down the road as she comes across Roman, and he is sitting in the ground with an injured leg. He can get up, though. He was just kind of taking a breather. I guess he hurt his leg on the way throughout the window, when they obviously went through the window at that little point. She asks who he is and why he helped her, and he says his name is Roman. And Rebeeca realizes that Shell was talking a lot about Roman before at Howe's, so she asks if he can help her get to the Civil War Museum somewhere north, and Roman says he just wants to get the hell out of here. But then she notices that he's actually shot in the leg. So that wasn't just from the window. She notices that Carver must have shot him in the leg when he was trying to get away. So she realizes that, oh, wait, we have a doctor that can probably help you with that. So Rebeeca kind of helps him walk as he says, all right, I'll come just to get my leg fixed up. And then he's going to get the hell out of there pretty much. And so they continue down the road while it's nighttime, but they go through the woods because they know it's going to be safer through the woods because Carver's probably going to be driving around looking for them. Then we go back to the base after all the prisoners are shot and killed besides the main three. Calvin comes outside to see the mayhem, and he is pissed. He is pissed. Luke, Jane, and Blake come out with their hands up as Calvin yells at them. He says, well, how could you guys be so fucking stupid? He says he didn't want this shit to happen. He even yells at his own men for killing them all. He only wanted maybe a few of them dead. Not just to send a message, just to show them that they need to stop. Why kill them all? He says they were all, he thought they were all survivors. But they just let all their people die right there. They just led them to their deaths. So Calvin's pissed. He even punches Luke in the face, and he says they're all going to pay for this shit. And then we get to see the killers, who are obviously out on this run that was sent by Carver to go to House. And they reach there, but the herd is gone. So they go back, and they find some tracks in the woods, in the dirt, and they follow it. And it leads to the outskirts of the Civil War site. And this group of killers, almost 30 of them, are all in the woods right now. They walk you back home to Stu and tell them what they found. And they see the group sitting outside of the camp, just chilling. It's now nighttime, of course, like I said. And they see them just chilling around there. This is right after Kenny's freak out. And they're all just relaxing, doing their thing, and talking about plans and stuff like that. And they see them. Not everyone, but they see most of who is in this group right now. And that's the end of the episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.